Everybody, how's it going? Guys, my name is Miles Witt Boyer, and y'all, this is the Photographic Collective podcast. I'm excited for this episode. Over the last several episodes, you guys have gotten to hear me really kind of ramp up, not the caliber of speaker. We've always had like great guests in here, but the direction in which you're hearing this second season take. And so today is sort of a perfect example of where I'm really wanting us to go as a community. And so we're sitting today with John Branch. John he's sort of taking the world by storm right now. And it's a big deal to me that we get the opportunity to like candidly chat with John, who's a friend of mine. He's a fellow Fujifilm photographer. But outside of like our personal relationship, he has just absolutely hit this massive come up in the last 2 years. And he's really set himself up for that in fascinating ways. And so I'm excited to dig into that. John, before I like unleash you to the world, dude, I want to read. So let me give you a backstory really quick. Anybody that's been listening to this episode or this podcast for a little while remembers the episode that I did with Phil Porto. Right. And I reached out to a bunch of Phil's friends and said basically like, hey, can you drop me like a quick intro, like just a quick bio on Phil Porto? And I just thought it was appropriate because I know you and Phil have been buddies for a long, long time. So I wrote Phil and said like, hey, no Casey and JoJo lyrics here. I need you to write me a super fast bio on John Branch. And so here's what he says about you. John Branch is the perfect example of hard work paying off. I met John years ago. He humbly explained that he loved what he did, but was having a hard time finding his voice. I asked him if I could mentor him and have him be part of my team, and he said yes. In that time, I noticed a work ethic like none I've ever seen before in the industry. Anything I poured out, John soaked up and made it his own. I was never met with excuses or pushback, just a heart to learn and grow. What's even better is that his character was always superior to his work ethic. Over that time, I noticed that John became family, not just a team member. Even after John's time under my mentorship came to an end, he showed his character and his work ethic and is now a YouTube superstar. He still constantly gives credit to his mentor and has poured into me in return as I grow my YouTube channel. The Lord truly has made this guy fearfully and wonderfully. Dude.
Slow clap. That was beautiful.
I feel like this would be the time to put foghorns in and officially say like John Branch is on the podcast. Okay, I want to ask really quick. First question for you though. What does it feel like to have somebody talk about you like that?
Honestly, it's one of those weird kind of humbling, but you also don't want to, puff yourself up too much. But it's not always put in like 150% in everything I do. So it's nice to have someone actually say it, because usually in the position that I'm in, especially for someone who puts in 150%, you tend to never get recognized for it. A great example of it actually was, so I majored in audio production, and I used to do post audio for like TV shows and commercials. And when I started working at this place, I started as an intern, and they kind of put me in the position of like the toilet coffee guy. And I was always in that position. Even later, when I got hired on full time, I was still the toilet coffee guy and doing audio. But I would show up every morning to work like an hour early to clean the toilets so that when people started showing up to the studio, I wouldn't be cleaning. Everything would be cleaned already. And then I could start doing audio work with them. So no one told me to do that. I wasn't getting paid any extra to do it. I just was like, this makes the most sense. Let me come in and, scrub these toilets. They sparkling toilets. You could eat off of them. They're so clean. So it's that same kind of thing. Like I have always been like that. So it's cool to see someone recognize this, because usually, I do it and no one cares. They're like, great, the toilets are clean, I guess. Like,
yeah.
No one's singing your praises over clean toilets,
Dude, so I think that actually teases us up for this conversation so beautifully well. Because the reason I wanted to reach to Phil for that is because there's a few guests, and you being honestly a perfect example. There's a few guests that I've wanted to have on this podcast for quite a while. But what I didn't want this to feel like was just like bro time, right? Like like just inside jokes. We've all heard those podcasts and they're horrible, right? But dude, I think what just happened, honestly, is like, it's the truth. It's this perspective on who John Branch not is today, but has been.
Yeah.
You know, like, who has John Branch been? And then just because like you just heard about him doesn't mean that he hasn't already been. And that's such a powerful perspective. I think anybody listening to this podcast, as I start to kind of chat in and we talk about John's like backstory, I want you to take that perspective with you into all of the photographers that you look up to, because so many times I think we tend to have this like perspective on people that's like, man, they're like overnight just blew up. But the reality is like, dude, I get the feeling from you that you've been training for success since you were a kid.
Yeah. Working at it hard every day.
Okay, so dude, so back me up to there. Like, we don't have to go back to adolescent years. That could be awkward. We can.
When I was a young boy.
Yeah. Hit me with, please don't tell me that you picked up a camera for the first time at 11 years old. But okay, so when did this happen for you? Like, early on for you, when did you decide that just like serving people creatively was going to be the outlet?
Yeah, that's the best way to put the question too, not photography, because photography for me came kind of later in my journey. I think what came early on was my creativity in general, because again, I majored in like music stuff, and this like need to make things as great as I could. So the hard work and ethic, and then also just want of like sharing information and teaching, which that is kind of what built into the YouTube side of things. So I always was trying to teach my peers about different techniques of like making music and stuff. That was a normal thing for me. And even when I was doing it, there was no purpose on my end. It was just like, I figured out these things. It's great. You want to see this too? Wow. And that was early on. Actually, yeah, I haven't even thought about some of this stuff. So in high school, this is right before I started getting Fruity Loops, which is a digital audio workstation program you can make music in. People were making it for techno music. My friend found it. So, he was like, haha, this is so cool. Look at what I found. And I like immediately picked it up and immediately was like better than all my friends, just like that, like making songs and stuff. We were making stupid albums and things. And, but that turned into turning it back. So rather than being like, haha, you showed me how to do this and now I'm better than you, it was like peer to peer. Let me show you what I learned while I figured it out. And it started from there. Photography came in later in life. I always tell the story. It was when me and my wife started having kids. When we had our first child, she wanted to stay home. And I was like, that's awesome. But I need another job. And she was like, no, you need to start a business. And at the time, I was dabbling with photography. Yeah,
there's that ultimatum like, right there. No, nay, sir.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yes, okay. Let me do that.
So yeah, I was dabbling with photography. I always thought it was cool, but I never in my life would say I was a photographer. But a lot of people noticed. They're like, hey, your composition and stuff's pretty decent. And that was just like natural talent. Like I had no idea what I was doing. So then I was like, well, I like photography. It's pretty cool. I think I can make money doing it. So then I took a year to really sit down and like, let me understand what I'm doing. And that was really how photography started. I always feel bad because everyone has these like beautiful stories of how they're an artist and stuff. And I'm like, I was trying to feed my family, and I was okay at photography.
What's fascinating to me though is like, I mean, not to bounce that back on you, but to like say that slower back to you. You feel bad because you were trying to feed your family, right? Like it's such a funny thing to me in this industry because everybody wants to have this like oddly romanticized version of their come up, like the moment that the camera reached off of the shelf and grabbed their soul and would not let go.
The light came down.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I think the thing that hurts most, I would say most, I think a lot of people in this industry is the fact that they're constantly trying to find their romantic story, right? Like, when is Nicholas Sparks going to write my bio? And dude, like so many people, they've come at this like you have, man. They've said like, hey, you know what I love to do? I love to just create stuff. Like
Exactly.
I just like to do stuff with my hands. And how many times have you heard this sentence, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm not an artist because I'm crappy at painting, but I picked up a camera. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I hear that all the time. I'm like, it's just you found something that your hands could do. And you know, like the camera is the original fidget spinner, you know?
Yep.
So, okay. So you come up through music and your wife drops this heavy ultimatum on you. That's like, it's time to start a business. Where did you start shooting? Like where was your heart early on?
It was always, I think it was always in people. I've always been I call it like I play a support role, which is why customer service always came naturally to me. I've been doing customer service for years and years. So I did dabble in a lot of other styles of photography, but people immediately was natural for me. So I was pretty much engagement and wedding from the start. I tried some stuff, I tried. That was bad because I had no idea what I was doing. Shooting a newborn with like a 6-week-old, or like, so they were too old. They were moving too much. And I was just like, what am I doing? And,
oh, buddy, I have some stories of that stuff. Like,
yeah, newborn is rough.
Will you shoot my
Props
newborn?
to all
like,
the
yeah.
newborns.
How old are they? They're 3 months old. I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh, no.
Yeah. This is going to be a 7-hour long session.
They're just laying.
Man, I have some of the worst experiences in my professional career on the other side of a baby, man. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here's the interesting thing for me is, we're going to get there. Like this last year, I think for you has been this sort of pivotal moment of kind of like, all right, all of this was for something.
Yeah.
And my question always in that stuff is, and like I said, we're going to get here, is then what comes next? Because there's so much pressure that shows up on you when you have this moment of success.
Yeah.
But between the time that you pick up a camera and you basically say like, hey, I want to shoot weddings, I want to shoot engagements. I think this is like the type of thing that a lot of people that listen to this can really relate to. There's this feeling of insecurity in the sense that like everybody now wants to call it imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's just this insecurity in the fact that like what you see in front of you is not what your camera is doing.
Yeah.
So how long did it take for you to start taking, creating
God.
work to where you were like, hey, actually, that's kind of good?
You're the best questions. Cause honestly, that took me like almost 7 years. And as a creative too, and it's something you deal with in any art at all, it's like you always, what good is, and you just can't do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? And you're always like, there's just something missing.
Mm-hmm.
So like years, 5 to 6 years. And finally, even recently, I did a little video teaser after I got the Rangefinder 30 Rising Stars, and I just put a bunch of my photos up, made like a quick kind of slideshow, like, one frame, just hitting all the pictures. And I was looking at it like, wow, like I actually am not so bad a photographer. Because even to this day, I'm still kind of like, yeah, it's okay, I guess.
I was, and this is me just being like super transparent, but I always have a hard time comparing myself to people that are nothing like me. Do you do that? Like I compare myself to these creative freaks that are like Fair, right? I always use that as an example, right? Where I'm like, man, I could never see composition the way that Fair sees composition.
Yeah.
And so then I look at my work and I'm like, it's so two-dimensional. It's so flat. The compositions are so easy. And then I see his stuff and I'm like, God, the guy is just a nut job. Like he's a complete like savant of composition. But it's hard for me to remember or like realize that also my clients aren't hiring Fair. They're hiring me.
Yeah.
Right. So like my good is good. It's okay. Like it's okay to kind of be where I'm at and kind of be on my own journey there a little.
Exactly. It's definitely the hardest thing to take into, just to realize like, and it's something I talk about with music, like when there's a producer you like, you can hear them in their music regardless. So like you and your art will always be you. And what we have to separate ourselves from sometimes is realizing that what we're seeing in someone else's art is them. So it's not that our work's not as good. That's just them. Yeah. And that's how they're expressing themselves. And we just have to be okay with ourselves, I guess.
Dude, I love that. Exactly. Like you have to get to a point where you're good with you. Now,
Yeah.
I'll say this. I've been following your work now for, it's got to be probably close to 3 years. From the first time really that somebody was like, you know, have you seen John Branch? And you know what I was intrigued by? I want to encourage you with this too, like live or as live as we can get here. Because I know you've been saying, like you said the other day, that you were battling your branding, right? Like you were kind of like fighting through this concept, like who is John Branch now? And why is it that I can visualize it, but somebody else can't like get that? Dude, the first thing that struck me about you, and I think a lot of it has to do, honestly, with just the strength in your name. But the first thing that struck me was like your work 3 years ago, I thought was beautiful, but it really was the courage, the boldness to who you are that I was like, all right, this guy's coming. Like, and he shoots the same camera that I do. So I better level up. Okay. So that actually segues us pretty well though. So how did the relationship with Fujifilm show up then?
That was, I think I can't remember if it was Phil shouting me out, but my name started coming up a lot, which is when they reached out to me because they were trying to re-up on all of their creatives because they just haven't really done much in a while. And that was kind of like the start of my trajectory. It was actually crazy because that whole year, I think that was 2020. And just around that time is when everything just started taking off, where it was like the YouTube picked up. I was shooting articles for the New York Times. Fujifilm hit me up. And it was so funny because I swear to you, like a year before, I was like, man, I want to be an X-photographer. How do I even get in contact with Fujifilm? And the next thing I know, I'm sitting there talking to Stacy, like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was just everyone started talking, and it was like John Branch.
I know that's what I was doing, but no, I mean, because I was on the team just like not even a full generation, like a half a generation before you, right? Mm-hmm. And people that are listening that don't quite understand how that works, you hinted at this. Like Fujifilm had this major kind of like revelation that was sort of like, okay, our pro team they're so talented, but they're not super active. And so like, let's sort of like modernize, maybe make things a little bit more relevant. And they started doing that with the guys like Paul Van Reeder and Allison Conklin and like this whole like collection of talent that was super cool. And like Brian Manier is like the GOAT. He's been there forever, goodness, right? So I know it's unfair. And then I was kind of the next like stepping stone, right? And they gave me the opportunity, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this means. And then right about the time I kind of felt like I was like, okay, all right, I kind of have a home here. Then they brought you in, and dude, I mean, you were and I don't know if you've ever heard you say this, but you were a disruptor, like. And I mean, that is such a compliment, but like your work is so disruptive, man. Like the way that you see things is just so counter to say like, hey, everybody's shooting on the edge of a mountaintop or like the side of a cliff. Well, not John Branch.
Yeah.
And I think that's bold. Where does that courage come from for you compositionally to just see things? And it almost feels to me like it's intentional. Like you're looking at things and saying like, this is different than other people would shoot it, so I'm going to shoot it.
You know, I never stopped to think about it, but it is kind of intentional. Wow. Yeah. The more we talk about it, all the subjects are just lining up. Because earlier I was saying the art is you. That is me. I've always been a very counter person. I always like to be the different one standing out. A great random example is like when I was in high school, I used to take a long tube sock and I would cut it and wear it on my arm, on like one arm, to just be like random, like totally different than everybody else. I used to dye my hair with a blonde kit so it would turn like orange. you
Same.
know, like, and I was cool with standing out like that. So composition is kind of the same point. I always had a pet peeve where I would go to wedding venues and it'd be like, oh, take the picture here. And there's a great spot here. And then no, I'm going over here. And I can remember seeing even the venue managers being like, no one's ever thought to take a photo here. And then they look at the photo and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I want to do something you've never seen.
You're asking the wedding
different.
planner to please, can we please move all these hypodermic needles? Because I really want to shoot right here.
Exactly.
Like, but no, that guy sleeps here. Well, can we move him just for a few minutes?
I need something different.
Yeah.
I always want to stand out.
I think it's powerful. I think it says a lot about your couples too, because it takes a lot of courage. Not just for you, like for you as the creative, that's fantastic. And the fact that you're like starting to get obviously like the accolades that you deserve for the work that you've put in, I think that's like, that comes without saying. But it takes a lot of courage for a couple to hire somebody that that is this counter to what is like, I hate to say that on trend, because your work is very on trend. It's very relevant and modern, but your eye is very unique.
Yeah.
And so who would, like, when you reach out to these couples or they reach to you, what's that relationship like for you? I ask that to everybody because I'm such a nut about client experience and like getting to know my clients, and not from a stupid, like cheesy questionnaire perspective that I don't read. Right. But from like an actual, like, who are you and why does my work matter to you? So what's that like for you to work with these people that are willing to trust you to do stuff that's just very different?
It's really cool. Like a lot of my couples, we end up having really, really cool relationships, even after the weddings. I tend to explain it to them as well as like when you work in like a corporate setting or something and you have, you know, like a team of people and you always go for like outings because it's a part of the job and they make you do it.
Forced fun.
Yeah. Which can be good and bad. So the kind of relationship I have with my couples, I would say is like that, like a work buddy that you're cool with and you can go to a work outing with, but then when you're done, you're like, okay, I'm going home, you know, and like, so you have the natural good amount of space, but you also don't mind being around them. And because of that, it turns into like my couples wholeheartedly trusting me. And like you were saying, like it takes courage because these couples, I mean, I'll be like, let's shoot in this dingy alleyway. And everyone they know and the bridal party and everybody's like, what are you doing? And they're like, John said to take it. It's going to be good. And that's where we sit. We're that close where it's just like, whatever I say goes, regardless of anyone else at the wedding, which is always so cool. I have a couple, I have so many stories. So just to talk about relationships, because I put a big emphasis on like treating my couples like people, not just dollar signs. So an unfortunate story, I had a couple who was supposed to get married in 2020, but the groom had cancer, like stage 4, just horrible. He did end up passing, but one thing that I felt really good about, and this is what shows you the relationship. So generally my contract, you know, if there's a booking fee, it's non-refundable. Yeah. But when 2020 went sideways, when a couple needed it, I was like, here's a full refund, no questions asked. Mm-hmm. And they were one of the couples who I went to go personally see and hand the money to them. And then like a month or so later, he passed. But I feel so much better as a person that I can have a relationship with my couples like that, where it's not like John was stingy about the deposit because on the contract, and then, you know, my husband died for stupidness when I could go face to face and meet with him again and get to see him one last time and have a nice conversation, you know, like, that's what I want in my couples. This is not a business in the sense of like, all I care about is the money. Like actually, and I could go on forever about this, but really weddings for me is a way for me to bring my art into your wedding. And, you know, regardless of, you know, divorces and things, because sometimes there's definitely reasons to get divorced. I want to be like a staple or like an anchor to your wedding so that if and when it gets hard, you can look at those pictures and feel it and be like, let's stick this out because we know we were meant for each other. And John captured that, and I can see it. I can feel it. So that's really my approach. So I refunded almost too much in 2020 because I was just like, I can't let y'all be out here like that.
I mean,
like,
I think it says so much about you, though. Dude, I've been saying for years that like the right wedding photographer will save a marriage. But it's because, you know, what people don't grasp, they just have no concept for it, especially early on in a photographer's like career. So often we see ourselves as like filling all these stereotypical roles, right?
Yeah.
And so we sell ourselves to our clients as like, we're protecting your memories. And man, I've said this, I'm like a broken record with this, but like, no, we're not. We're capturing our memories.
True.
Right? I'm shooting my camera through my eye, from my perspective, my vantage. I don't get to be the bride. Right? So like my memories aren't her memories. So if I don't have enough proximity to her, and if I don't have enough respect for her, enough empathy for her, and vice versa, to allow me to be right there to share those feelings with her, then all she gets is a whole gallery full, whole collection full of my memories. And that's not to say that that's not valuable, but it's not nearly as valuable. But I think there's a two-way street there, right? The other, like the reciprocation of humanizing people that intentionally is that when 2020 happens, you know, when people are hurting and trying to figure out how to get on with their lives, and they're struggling financially, and you as a photographer have literally become a burden to their life. Yeah. It's like, at what point are you willing to say, like, my burden is worth more than your burden? And so, dude, I think it just says an incredible amount about, like Phil said early on about you, that like your character is the type of thing that like of course your couples can trust you because you back up who you're going to be, like what you say you are. So, okay, that leads us then, man, this is perfect. You've been one of the guys, I'm going to say this as delicately as I can, but I'm going to ruffle feathers no matter how I say it. So I'm just going to say it. The vast majority of YouTube personalities are not talented artists. They're people that have figured out a way to have an opinion that people want to hear. And so they've stopped working. And that's a really bold statement. And I hope I don't just like grossly offend the whole world by saying that. But like, it's no different for me to say, like, you know, a lot of times when you run into, like, you meet a college professor, and there are people, right, that were like, they were really working, and then they fell in love with teaching, and the teaching took over and the work had to kind of slow down. Let's call it that, right? Well, dude, you've taken over YouTube I'm not even exaggerating when I say that. You have actually taken over YouTube while also, you know, parallel trajectory, been in the biggest couple of years of your career. Yeah. So how did, of all things, while the rest of the world was trying to prioritize Instagram and not realizing that it was, you know, like dying the way it is.
Oh my goodness.
It's a wasteland, isn't it?
Instagram's the worst.
How is it that you decided, like right at the right time, to say, you know what, I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep my life over. I'm gonna really kind of show up on YouTube.
Yeah, that was especially the right timing. I don't know how that even happened. I had a history of YouTube before. I had a channel where I was doing music production, sound design stuff, which that one ended up getting around 8,000 subscribers. But this was like back in the golden age of YouTube, where you could put anything up and make mad money. Yeah. I wasn't doing it like that back then. I was just making videos because, again, I just had this natural urge to want to teach others. Yeah. So I had like a little drip of YouTube in me already. And when I moved from New York back to North Carolina, which that's a whole nother story because me and my wife literally just dipped. I had no job. That's when I went full-time wedding photography. I just was like, you know what? I love YouTube. I'm just going to try and make videos. I had no idea for anything. Actually, no, I always tell this story. My initial goal with YouTube was I was trying to get hired by companies like Honeybook or PicTime or something to do videos for their knowledge base. because I was doing stuff like that at Squarespace. They had a video team and I was doing it there, which that also helped me learn some more stuff like screen recording and things. So I had like a video kind of background. So I first started trying to do that. So if you go back to my early videos, you'll see they're very like extra corporate-y, like this is how you use HoneyBook. And I was trying to do that and they never hired me. I actually interviewed and everything. And they forgot. I went and visited them and they were like, you interviewed? And I was like, yeah, I interviewed with you all a couple of times. But
man, I'm going to send this episode over to them.
Yeah, they turned me away. Actually, it was good that they turned me away because that's what made me start doing YouTube. So I was like, okay, this is not really working. No one's really taking it. So I'm just going to make videos. You know, I'm probably not going to make money, just whatever. Made a couple videos and I had one video blow up. And it pushed me into the YouTube partner program, which is where you start getting money. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll try to at least do one video a week. And then here we are. I don't know how that happened, but the timing was perfect because it was like the end of 2018 when I started. So I had a whole year and then 2020 happened. And from that point, I had another video at the beginning of that year that blew up also. And then, yeah, it just started compounding on itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to say it out loud because I think, again, like if there had never been Instagram, I'm not sure that any of us would use the word influencer so interchangeably with. But I also think I think that for as good as it is that we finally have a title for that type of thing, I think what went wrong was people now use content creator in exchange for artist. Right, like that makes me sort of sad if I'm honest, but it's funny to me and almost sad that I never jumped on the wagon, man. But like while everybody was jumping up on Instagram and it just exploding, YouTube became it shifted from this sort of like black market way that you could make a little bit of money here and there into like actual business, like real business is happening over on YouTube, actual education. And I love that you're a pretty affluent part of that community. And I would go as far as to say, like, I think that you're not just like a YouTube personality now, like your content is actually serving people. Like it's actually, you know, solving problems in people's lives. And that's an enormous, again, like an enormous amount of pressure to take on. How do you juggle the timelines? Because let me preface that question by saying this. I know you're a part of like my Facebook group but dude, I just get hammered all the time, right? Like I'll post something out there that's like, you know, hey, Mindset Monday, get up, get active, right? And like the top 3 comments are always like, I don't have time. And I always kind of laugh because I'm like, man, you have as much time as anybody else. Your days aren't shorter. Exactly. You're just really crappy at spending it, you know? So how does a guy like you that's running, I don't know, it sounds to me like you've got at least 18 different things happening in your life at any given time, and you're a dad and you're a husband. How do you prioritize what is important at any given time?
That is honestly the hardest part. I have always been good at what I call juggling. I don't know if I have like ADHD or something, but I'm really good at like doing multiple things at the same time and keeping them afloat. But aside from that, honestly, like my wife's a big part of me having the time as well. We have a very like what I would call like traditional household where she takes on most of the housework and then I kind of come on the back end of that as well. We also homeschool our kids, so there's all of that also. But it's a very weighted system where we're both taking our roles because I make all the money, so I do all the money stuff. She helps with the kids mainly, and then we kind of vice versa, kind of help out where we can. And yeah, after that, it's just hard juggling because at this point, what happened to me, especially in 2021, was wedding photography was going well and YouTube blew up at the same time. But then YouTube got to a place where it was almost too much. I didn't realize it was going as well as it was. So then I started having like sponsored videos. So it turned into, you know, you can make videos whenever and whatever. And if you miss a video a week, it doesn't matter. Versus now every month you have at least 2 to 3 videos you have to make because someone's paying you for it. And you have wedding couples emailing you and you have new inquiries. And I don't have a team yet. It's just me. I just now hired on an editor for my videos, and he's doing like 80% of the videos. So I'm still finishing the videos myself. But yeah, 2021 was rough because it was just like, oh, it's it's already February 30th and you have 2 sponsored videos you have to make. And I'm like, oh, I haven't even recorded them. And that was every month. And then there was a couple who was like, hey, did you finish editing our photos? And hey, did you have a chance to work on our album and make the changes we wanted? Yeah, I grasp at the time.
Okay, man,
I make it somehow.
This stuff's so powerful for people to hear then. So because the reality is like everybody wants to delegate too quickly, right? Like everybody wants to, that's the thing that like maybe you've waited too long, but most people want to do it too quick, right? They're like, hey, the moment you book 6 weddings, make sure you have an editor. Also make sure you have an album designer and a CRM, and don't reply to your own emails, and make sure somebody's doing your social media management. And like before you notice, like know it, it's like, well, I just charged $6,000 for that wedding. Why do I only have $11 in my bank account?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Right?
I talk about that all the time too. It's just like you're running a bit. You have to think about your business too. You can't just, well, I don't want to have to work too much. You have to do the heavy lifting at first.
Yeah. You're gonna have to work. Okay, so this is where like this is my favorite part of like these conversations, because we start to get to the meat. Like we've got the backstory. We kind of have a sense of like who you are, but like we start to get to the meat of like, okay, this is like John as a human, right? Like this is flawed John, not YouTube, not YouTube personality John, but like this is flawed. This is John takes on too much crap. Give us some advice then, man. Like what is one way then that you are able to close out your week and not hit Saturday just so angsty and stressed out?
I don't know if this is good advice or not.
It doesn't matter.
Or if I like have issues, but I'm a big person on like boundaries. And I don't know if it's like too much, but I have like thresholds. And I think it's because I'm like a half and half introvert. I wouldn't totally call myself an introvert, but I do like my own time. And there's like thresholds of like, I have a family. My family matters to me. So people text me and it's like, you're waiting for 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And that's, I do feel bad a lot of times, but I just won't. Sundays I've dedicated to like, I don't do anything, no emails, nothing. I don't check it. And I've gotten really good. And again, maybe it's a bad habit of literally being like, text message, great. I'll get to you when I do. Yeah. That's what it is. Like, I don't have that immediate feel of like, I have to do this. I just never, I literally, and the downside of that is a lot of times I'm behind. So when I do sit down to work, I can't just focus in and be like, okay, I'm going to do these things. Cause it's usually like, there's a pile of this and there's a pile of that. And there's a pile of this and there's a pile of that. What are you going to do first? And you're like, I don't know. Cause it's so much. So let me just try, and then I get to Saturday and it's like, yeah, you haven't done what you're supposed to do, but I don't know. I just trust that I'll get it done, like that it'll all be okay. And
yeah, I think that just says a lot about you as a person, man. I've started telling my clients, and just trying to be bold with them about the fact that it's like, hey, if you text me on a Sunday, I'm going to hit Monday morning. And by the time I hit Monday morning, I'm usually in a wind sprint. Like I get up and I get after it, and I've got edits to do. I want to take a long run today. I've got email backlog. I'm going to do a podcast record. Like I've got so many things. If you text me on Sunday, there's a solid chance that I'm going to forget to write you back. So you're better off. Exactly. Like you're better off writing a Post-it note yourself as a client and saying like, text Miles tomorrow, because I've had to set those kind of professional boundaries. Because the other side of it is, I'm trying to think of who this was. I know I was on, it may have been Pi Jersa, but it may have also been Hartley. But I was on a podcast with one of these guys. It's just brilliant guys that said, they said this, and it hit me. It really resonated, where they were like, why is it that we're always asking the people that we love the most to be the most patient with us?
Yeah.
Like it's so uncomfortable for us, right? To be like, hey, clients, hey, people that are paying for my talent. It's so uncomfortable for us to say, like, please be patient, please understand, please be respectful. And that's so awkward and uncomfortable. But for some reason, it's easy for us to like look at our children that are growing up and be like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm missing your childhood. I'm sorry that I'm traveling again. I'm sorry. Like, but, you know, deal with, daddy's got to work. And it sounds to me like you've kind of got your head on straight, even though it sounds like you're super spastic. I want to get up there and like help you clean up.
Yeah. That's actually I used to break dance back in the day, but my B-boy name was Spaz. That was it.
All right. Yeah, clickbait here. If you click over to Miles's YouTube channel, I'm gonna have an exclusive video of John Branch breakdancing here. That's not true. Dude, okay. I'm hilarious.
Oh, but so on that note too, like with just making your family have to wait. Like I can remember, so when I first started the business, I was still working a day job at Squarespace and also doing wedding photography on the weekends. That's when I wasn't taking Sundays off. I would just work and work and work and work. And I can remember when my daughter, she's like 7 now, but I can remember because I'd have to commute to work. So I'd wake up earlier than everyone gets up. And I come home late when everyone's asleep. And then I'd have, you know, like team outings at Squarespace. So I'd be gone all night. And then I have weddings of the week. And I can remember I can vividly remember coming home and having her look like a totally different person. You know, like that first year of life, kids grow so much. Mm-hmm. So like 2 to 3 days I haven't seen her and just like, she just looks like a totally different. And I'm like, oh my God, like, when did you grow this much? You look totally different. So yeah, for me now, it's like, I'm sorry. Like I'm going to take the days off. Even if I'm swamped with work, I'm just going to let it simmer in the background. And I know I'm going to take care of it.
Okay. All right. So switch gears with me here then. Before we start talking about, I want to get to all the rangefinder stuff. Like this last 6 months for you have just been mammoth, right? Outside of the YouTube thing, now moving kind of more into you as a photographer. But what has been, just because I'm curious, and I want to see like from your perspective, what's been the one YouTube video that you've created that you personally have been the most proud of? Not the one that has been like the explosion, but the one that you've sat back and been like, that has me all over it.
I'd probably say it's some of my full wedding day videos. Probably the most recent one I have, which is of a couple, Shamir and Keegan. It's the groom. He has the orange suit on.
Yeah.
But I put a lot of time, because those videos may seem like, wow, he's giving us free information. I put a lot of time in those videos. Mm-hmm. A lot of other people, when they do full wedding day videos, it's very much just like, here's my GoPro and hear me talking about it. If you really watch those videos, I like, and again, this must be the musician in me, but I like pick music for every scene that's happening in the wedding, and I fade it nicely into the next scene. And, you know, like when the bride is getting on her dress with her mom, it's like a nice somber, like feely song. And when the couple's having a party, you know, it's like, it's a more upbeat. And I go through and like, that's the majority. So like those videos, the full wedding day videos, are really like a work of love. And even from a YouTube perspective, if you think about it, like I could probably turn those into courses, you know?
Yeah.
They're literally like 2 to 3 hours long. Mm-hmm. But here I'm just like, here it is for free, which again, that's just kind of how I am. And I do plan on making a course, which when I do, it will, but I just like to teach and show things. So that's like a very like baseline, like, this is me, this is what I do. And when I do it, I'm not just going to be like, here's some stuff. Like, I'm going to make it a nice experience and make the music all nice and make you feel it yourself.
Man, that's really cool. It's super relevant for me right now. So, you know, we're launching into this whole, the Photo Co University program right now, where I'm like building this massive curriculum out. And a big part of that curriculum is that it pairs with, like, each module pairs with a protocol, like a training protocol. And each protocol pairs with a guest speaker and a book that I've read that coordinates with, you know, kind of what I've learned in all these things. And all of that for me was, I'm not going to say it was easy. It's been an incredible amount of work, right? But but it was the type of thing where it was like I was able to sit down with pen and paper and piece it all together. But man, I'm shooting today, actually, this afternoon. I've got a shoot, and I've got Jared is coming to do a whole BTS video. And dude, the fact that you're right. The fact that you just give those away is wild, because it's a sick amount of work.
Yeah.
And it's so much more work. It's so much more work than just being like, not to degrade this. I've got some of my friends are some of the most talented wedding videographers I've ever known, right? Like, these people are unbelievable, but they have a very clear job to do, right? It's like, show up, document the wedding. Okay, cool. And then, like, the edit down is so hard and it's so intensive, but then, like, to do it behind the scenes, like to do it where it's like, we're juggling, like, okay, well, I do want you to focus on the couple, but I also, and the posing and the prompts, but I also want you to focus on the direction and the instruction, the composition, and I'm like, man, it's a lot. I already can tell you that Jared is like shaky, because he's like, okay, how is this coming together? I'm like, it better come together well, because now I promised the whole world that this thing is going to be dope.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have to get home and be like, I hope the footage was okay, because I can't go back and do it again.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that we committed with everybody was, like, all of these shoots that we're filming, they were all going to be like, I hate styled shoots. It's so easy to make something perfect when it's not real. And so the thing that we committed with everybody was like, hey, you're going to get a chance to come behind the scenes with me on an engagement shoot or on a wedding or whatever, but it's going to be real. So, like, you're going to see me stutter. You're going to see me trip over my own ideas. You're going to see, like, you're going to watch those failures happen. So, okay. Well, I was just interested. Like, I'm just intrigued, man, because you do have this very, you have this really approachable persona to you that's not overly polished. And I love that. Like, I love the fact that you're willing to say, like, man, I'm just John, and I don't know, like, that works for the people that are paying me. And so if you're not paying me, that's all right. If it doesn't work for you, like, so, okay. So this year you won the Rising 30.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. That's a major accolade. That's a huge deal.
I'm still surprised it even happened. I think I'm still in shock. So I'm always just kind of like, I won it, I guess.
I mean, okay, first things first, congrats.
Thank you.
But secondly, like, I think this is interesting, though, because I think people need to connect these dots. So if people that listen to the last episode with Don Jarvis, we were talking a little bit about the fact that, like, a lot of people that win this award or win an award that's similar, right? Like, they win a Fearless award, or they win whatever. Although I would say personally, this is like the largest currently in the industry. Like, this is the Academy Award. But anyway, a lot of people that win this, they're not prepared for it. And so their fan base shifts, like, drastically shifts overnight, right? So it's like, they've only ever had 2,000 Instagram followers, but all of those people have been brides and clients and guests and friends and, whatever. And then suddenly they win this award and they jump to 30,000, but now 28,000 of those people are photographers. And it's like, man, everything has to shift about who you're talking to and why you're talking to it. And we were just observing the fact that, like, not only is it a lot of pressure, but also it's got to be like a very intentional thing. If you're not careful, you lost what made you special.
Yeah.
And I actually think that you were probably more poised. That's why you say you were surprised. I'm not. I actually think you were probably more poised, like, more deserving of this award than nearly anybody that's won it in the last several years, just because even though your work is clearly beautiful, you were already pouring into the industry. Does that make sense? Like, you were already relevant. So, but what's that process feel like? I mean, we've done WPPIs together. We've hung out in Vegas. Shout out to that time I went and bought a swimsuit so I could sit next to the pool by you for 2 hours before I caught a plane with a wet swimsuit in my bag.
It was so fun, so good.
but I mean, what does that process feel like?
I don't even know how to explain it, because it's especially with just like who's following you and stuff. I mean, it was kind of a stressful process in general, just like applying for it and everything. And it's a really, I guess, eye-opening process too. That's what I was kind of talking about earlier, like sitting back and really looking at my work. And, you know, when they're like, hey, give us 30 of your best photos from weddings, but it can't be the same weddings and it needs to be different parts of the wedding. And it really makes you like dig into yourself and your work. And it made me take a step back. And again, I still every day was like, I'm really not that great of a photographer. But after sitting there and doing it, it's honestly, it's a process I feel like all photographers should do, especially if you're on that level of like, I don't like my work, or like, why is my work not good? Go back and find 30 of your best photos, you know, not from the same wedding, and also different parts of the wedding day. So, you know, your reception, your first look, your getting readies, your candid photos of the guests, like sit there and find it and then just look at it. Cause it totally changed my whole perspective. Cause I went from being like, I'm really not that good, to being like, wow, like when did I even do this? Like my work is pretty good. Like it's not so bad. And, you know, like all the people you look up to, oh, I'll never look like that. But then when you sit there and look at the 30 just like defining photos, it's a good product. Everyone should do it. Everyone, even if you're just starting, after you get like 2 to 3 weddings under your belt.
I mean, I had
everybody should do it.
The kind of like crazy, and I mean this sincerely, mean this. I had this like the crazy kind of I don't know if I'd call it an honor, but maybe a privilege to see a lot of your submission photos before you sent it in. Because you sent over to so guys that are listening, we have this sort of text thread, this group with a lot of people I've already mentioned, Paul Van Reeder and Brian Minier and Allison Conklin and Phil Porto and John Branch and I. And so you sent a lot of these photos over, right? And we were all kind of like picking them apart, being like, you know, I love this one. I think this one's too repetitive. I think this, but I remember sitting back. I love the way you just put that, because I remember sitting back and being like, okay, my whole experience with John has been, and I've seen several photographers go through this process now. And I've helped several photographers go through the puppy break. I've seen several photographers kind of like pour over, like, how do they pick it? Right. But I remember sitting back and looking at your work and being like, man, I know John's work in the one-off. Give me one image out of 15. I can tell you which one is John's, and give me one image out of 30. And I think I could tell you which one is John's, and give me one image out of 50. And I bet I could tell you which one is John's. But like, to see a whole collection of your work like that, I sat back and I was like, dang, this guy's got it. Like the full day, like this guy has it's not about the consistency. It's this cohesion that's like this glue that molds it together. And you said it early on, the art is you.
Yeah.
And it was neat for me to be able to say, like, I don't know you that intimately, but I was looking through your work, and it's why I think your clients feel the ability to trust you. Because I was looking through your work and I was like, man, I can see that glue. Like that's powerful. And what's interesting is, in the past, every time I've done that process with other photographers, my big bounce back typically has been like, hey, there's just a ton of inconsistency in your edit. So it's like, you know, these are all great images, but they don't feel like they flow. And dude, I love the fact that, at least from what I can see, your post process is a very minimal part of the artistic process. Like, you're shooting with compositional finished product in mind. Yeah. So, okay. So give us some advice then. Like, you've got a photographer that has been at this for 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5, maybe years. And they're starting to get to the point where it's like, stylistically, they want to feel more confident with who they are. And you just had the opportunity to sit back and look at your own work and say, like, hey, I found that, but I don't even know when I found that. Right. Like it just happened. How can these photographers find some confidence in the fact that, like, that will happen for them?
It's the hardest thing to say and give like a definite answer. But I really do think just kind of sitting in who you are and holding on to it the whole time. I know, like, especially just stereotypically through our lives, especially coming up through high school when you're trying to figure out who you are. But on the same end, everyone's trying to tell you to be like, like this or that. Or everyone, you got the jocks and the goths and the whatever. Like everything gets sectioned off. And I think we grow up and we stay in that too. So when we get into our art, we're immediately like, oh, well, I want to be the elopement photographer, or I want to be whatever. But you have to unapologetically just be you, which again, we talked about it earlier, like with my composition and stuff, where it's just like, I'm going to shoot this thing. I'm going to find a thing that's different. I'm going to find a thing that's me. And for a while too, it's hard, especially when you're not quote unquote somebody, because the weird transition for me recently now has been so many people like, oh, wow, your work. Oh, John. I remember before I'd be shooting stuff and people are like, why are you doing that? When I'm out this, that doesn't look good. And you're just like, and yeah, you have to find the middle ground of understanding, taking feedback. There's always feedback, regardless of how you feel about your work. There's always something. I always take the perspective of like, what can I learn from this? So even if someone is hating, really take it and be like, what is their perspective? What can I learn from this? Now, I still can be like, well, they're just hating, throw it away. But I still want to, there's something in there I'm sure I can learn from. So there's that thin line. And then also the other side of it of being like, no, that is not me and you're wrong. Having those two places of being confident, like, I know this is okay and good. And what makes you more confident in it is taking the bits you can from any type of feedback, like straight on haters who literally aren't giving you any good constructive criticism, and people who actually care and will give you constructive criticism. Take all of that and then take you and then mesh it together to be like, I know I'm a good photographer. I understand cameras, like on that sense, just photography. I know that. So I can piece together my feedback differently than just being like, oh no, I'm not doing it like everyone else. Well, I know what I'm doing is okay. It's almost like, and it's not a technique that he created, but Ryan Brenizer with the Brenizer method, like that's not, people have done it before. He just popularized it, but it's the same thing. So I guarantee you the like technical perfect photographers, is like I call them, where everything, ISO always is 100, and no offense to anybody, but there's
the crop junkies that yell at you for the fact that it's like your horizon is off by 1 degree.
Yeah, exactly. So Ryan's over here like, I'm gonna take a 100mm lens and take multiple photos and combine them because now it's wide but the background's blurry. People were probably like, bro, why don't you just use a wide lens? That was the first thing they thought. But now here we are. I remember when I first learned the Brenizer technique. It was like 2006, and it's all I did. I was like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing. But it's that kind of, he knew that technically he was taking good photos.
Yeah.
His clients were happy. And at the end, he liked the effect he got. So regardless, I'm sure, there's feedback you can take and learn from it. But at the same end, it's like, technically I'm not wrong. So, and that's how you get people who do, I don't know what that technique's called. The drone photographers. Have you seen those shots where there's like a couple and it's a drone shot and then the background like scoops into almost like Inception?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Like, like someone had to, you have to be confident in yourself to do something like that. Because everyone's gonna be like, what are you doing? That makes no sense. But then you make the photo and now everyone's like, well, it's the coolest thing. Or like a lot of double exposures they're doing now. Yeah. They're getting so creative with double exposures.
Jonas Rask, the stuff that you're like, you're just mind blown. You're like, whoa, your 2 images are better than 20 of mine. And they're all in one. Yeah.
Okay. But like you can't do that unless you're like,
you just have to try it
enough.
Yeah. There's just courage. Like
I know where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So do you have, I mean, this is such a big part of this podcast. Is everything always pointing back to community? Like, do you have a group of people, like a set group of people that you lean on creatively? Like, I know that you're very independent, right? And you kind of look at your own stuff and say like, no, this is good for me or this is bad for me. But do you have a community that you feel like you can kind of leverage to, keep you accountable for that stuff?
Honestly, I personally would say that's probably one of the places where I'm lacking the most is community.
Yeah.
I have enough community. So again, like our chat group, you, Phil Porto, there's a lot of people that I definitely lean on. And there's people who I value their opinions way more than anyone else's. But I don't feel like I have a tight knit community enough yet. But that does help again, because even us talking now, having someone else give you perspective on your, because I'm fairly self-aware, but you always have a blind spot, especially to yourself. So to have someone else sit down and be like, this is what I see about you. Or like, even like you talking about boldness and being different. And I know that I have always been literally like if everyone's in a line this way, I almost purposely will be like, I'm not going in that line. Mm-hmm. I have to first go over here and then be like, okay, there's nothing here. Let me go to the line. But I will purposely go the other direction.
Yeah.
So it's great hearing someone say that and being like, huh, I never thought about that, but it's true. Or you're like, oh, it's so bold. And I was like, that's true. Because I am unapologetically just like, here it is. You either like it or you don't.
I think it helps having somebody that can view your work like that and can kind of help you pick out, like, for a lot of the guests in here, but also just a lot of my friends. So I keep mentioning this, but like last week's episode was with Dawn, right? And I was telling her that I was like, I think your superpower is empathy. Like I see your clients' lives through their photos. And I can almost feel them breathing. Like your photos almost look like they're moving because people are so perfectly confident inside of their own skin when she shoots. And yeah, I think community is such a big part of that though, is having people. And it's a hard thing to find these days.
It's hard.
It's because we're probably the most connected we've ever been as an industry, and yet we're the most isolated we've ever been. I mentioned this in my Facebook group yesterday. Actually, I mentioned this in my Facebook group. I made this post where I said, like, hey, I just clicked over into the Facebook wedding photographers Facebook group, the one that has like 51,000 angry people in it. And
I hate those groups.
And then I commented over, I posted over in my own Facebook group, in the Photographic Collective group. And I was like, I'm realizing that often that's all it takes for me to know how important this group is like, go over and see how toxic and how angry and how cynical so many people have become about this industry. Yeah. And it's those pixel peepers like that you were talking about, the people that are like so quick to take an image that, somebody's really proud of, and it may be imperfect, but that's okay. I mean, it's okay for artists to be at different places in their career, but they just get shredded, like I hate it from, I don't know if you, I can't even go in those groups because I get so angsty. Like I feel like I need to defend people, but then what I end up doing is I feel like I need to defend horrible photography because I'm like, you're not wrong. This work is really poorly shot. Like it's really poorly done, but like, we don't have to attack their character about that, like
exactly.
It would be okay to just write in and say like, hey, spot color sepia is not really like a thing right now, but like you just keep going. It's going to be okay. Well, dude, it means a lot to me. I know, I'm assuming I'll see you in Vegas here in a few weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's 2 weeks.
Is that
3?
right? Isn't that wild?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. But man, it just means like, it means a lot to me to spend time with friends like you, honestly, where I get to say like, I haven't done this yet and I probably should. But you just mentioned this, like you feel like every photographer should go through that moment where they look at their own work.
Yeah.
They pick out their bangers and they sit back and say like, oh dude, I got it. And what's funny is I did that for my X-Photographer portfolio, right? When Fuji was like, okay, we want your, for the global site, we need your best images. And I sat back and I was like, dang, like, all right, these kind of live on their own. But I think I'm going to send them over to you. I'm not kidding. I think I'm going to do that because I would love to hear, and I don't want you to just puff me up. I want to know your perspective on my work. I think that's a really valuable thing for us to do for each other in this industry.
Definitely.
To say like, hey, your blues are super inconsistent, Miles. You should figure out how to shoot blue. And it's true. I do struggle with blue. Okay, man. Well, so hey, as we wrap up, dude, this is a whole podcast full of people that are like, just as a general rule, I would say most of these people are just pursuing purpose. Like that's the whole point of this podcast, is like just the positivity of it. I don't care what gear you shoot. It's ironic because both of us are a part of a pro team, and yet you almost never hear us, say like, get out there and grab the GFX 100S.
Yeah, exactly.
For a more dynamic experience with your, right? Like I want to hear from you. The last thing, like, what is something that every photographer could do to just embrace their role in who they are as like as a capture artist?
Oh my goodness.
There's a big question.
Yeah, that's a big question.
I want one piece of advice for every person that touches a camera.
So many angles to take too.
That's an ironic answer.
Yeah, pun intended. No. I think just to, I kind of talk about this when I talk about YouTube, but now that I think about it, I think it's just a creative thing in general. Is a lot of people talk about like defining your why. I don't think that's the best way to put it, because I know whenever someone tells me to define the why, I'm like, I don't understand what is why, but figure out what you want to do, what you want to impact. It's kind of like earlier I was talking about how I want to be an anchor on my couple's marriages. That's like a pivotal part of what I do with my photography, which is what kind of guides how I take my photos. It guides how I, like you were saying, like I'm a third party. The memories are from my perspective, but I'm trying to make my perspective like in love. Like I want to be in love with the moment so that's happened. So I was able to get there because I early on defined what I wanted to do. Like I want to support your marriage. I want to almost be like the officiant, like I'm the second person to the officiant. They make it official and I capture it officially.
Yeah, there you go.
If that makes sense. So it's the same thing. Like no matter what style or genre of photography you're doing, even if it's not like for people, let's say like landscape, and let's say your purpose is like, maybe you're really into, saving the earth and global warming and stuff. So your purpose is like, I want you to see and feel how beautiful the world is. And if that is your anchor, it makes it much easier for you to flow through your work, knowing that I'm trying to show people how beautiful this earth is before we destroy it. And so that's what I would say to any photographer. Do your homework, figure out, the nuts and bolts and the shooting in manual versus whatever, like, know that, and then keep it in the background and lean on your anchor. Like figure out what keeps you grounded and why you want to do this.
Dude, I love that. I think there's so much depth in just saying that, like, yeah, just pursue purpose. Just find out why your angle, why the way that you see the world could, maybe not even should, but could matter to somebody else.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It only needs to matter to literally one other person. That's it. Like you don't have to become big, and everyone's just, if you change one person's life because they saw your photo and they were like, oh my goodness. Yeah. There it is. You've done it.
That goes straight back to the idea of like, good photographer, like talented photographers, intentional photographers save marriages. Man, what a dude, we just went full circle. I think we just wrapped this thing.
Yeah. Put a score on I did it.
Virtual high five. Man, I'm so John, I realized this and then you just reiterated this like 100 times during this recording. You have got so many things on your plate, and man, I'm so grateful that you took an hour away to just sit and like chat and hang with me. It means a lot.
Yeah, no problem. It's fun.
Dude, I mean, and I think guys, if you've made it this far into this episode, if you haven't been a quitter yet, then I'll leave you with this. Obviously, in the show notes and all of that stuff, there's every way that you can interact, that you can drop John a DM, or connect with him, go see his work, go do all that stuff. But I feel like the industry at large is so quick to say like follow and smash my face and like all of this stuff. But here's what I want you guys to get out of this is like, I'm just Miles, and I've done a few cool things in my career, and I've been to some cool places, and I've shot some cool people. But what makes me special is not the doors that having a camera has opened. It's been the ability to build relationships with people that I look up to. And I think that John is very similar in that sense. Like he's pursuing relationships and purpose in a way that will last long beyond, his career holding a camera. And so, dude, I'm just really grateful for you and excited to see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
But as you sign off, as you tell everybody go away, what's the plan for WPPI? Are you doing anything cool, anything exciting, anything that people can like jump in and be a part of?
Oh yeah, I'm teaching a whole bunch of classes actually. And I might try and do something on my own as well. I haven't decided that yet, but come check me out. I'm speaking at the Wedding Summit. I'm also speaking about YouTube and video. I'm also showing how I record my BTS video as well. So all that stuff is at WPPI, and I'll also be there. I love to just chat with people.
Yeah.
Again, like Miles was just saying, like for me, this is not like and subscribe. Like I would love to talk to you. Like find me on the show floor. Tell me about your life, ask me questions. I'm an open book. I'm almost too much of an open book. So
you can find John at the weird little bar next to the volcano in the Mirage and buy him a beer then.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I will. Dude. All right, man. Well, I just super grateful for you. I really appreciate you. And yeah, dude, I know on behalf, honestly, of this whole wild, quickly growing community that I don't even know how I started. Man, we all look up to you. So it's a really cool thing, guys. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, I'm sure, we always release these on iTunes and Spotify first, but click over and check out how freaking beautiful John Branch is on YouTube. Like the dude, it's just his hoodie perfectly matches the background. It's a special
I'm
thing.
styled all the way through,
dude. And I'm like this. I have to go. I don't even know if I'm going to post it because this scrim this light on my face is so bad, but it's okay. I'm just feeling angsty about how much better looking you are than I am. So, all right, my man. We'll chat soon. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Appreciate you.